When you learn to embrace death, then you will know what it means to live. It's this paradoxical concept that, though we may not realize it, is taking place at every moment and every day. Death is continually occurring within and around us, and it is a necessary process and a necessary step to feeling more alive, feeling more energized, feeling more exuberant, feeling refreshed, feeling more passionate, feeling more focused, and showing up in a more loving, more caring, more positive manner. We have to shed that which no longer serves us. This applies again at multiple levels of reality, whether it's biologically in your cells through this constant recycling and dying off of old material that's no longer serving you, and that has to be killed through a process known as apoptosis, to parts of yourself that psychologically no longer serve you. And there are patterns to which you've adapted. We talk about this so much, right? There are patterns to which you've adapted over time that no longer serve you in your vision for a better life. And there must be a death, a letting go, letting a past part of yourself die off and decay so that new life can emerge from that soil. And then even taking that, extrapolating that to the more existential realization that, yes, you are going to die, memento mori, okay, which is a grim reminder for some, but I believe that the recognition of memento mori, remembering death, and the intention of that is recognizing the gift that you have, recognizing the gift that you have right now to live as you desire and to show up as your highest self in each and every moment, because death is a mystery. Death is something that a lot of people, it's very taboo in a lot of modern culture today, right, to even think about it or discuss it. That degrades the relationship of death to life, and more as we're seeing this research come out about wanting to improve our longevity and to stave off death. I think that's a virtuous pursuit, let's say. I think longevity and increasing our longevity is valuable. But when it comes at neglecting the value of death and the necessity of death, again, to sustain life, I think it's a folly in that sense. Because, again, we have to contextualize and understand death as belonging to the whole, right, of light and dark, yin and yang, connection, separation, spirit and matter, positive and negative, masculine and feminine, vertical, lateral, life and death. It is a part of the process of becoming whole. Wholeness is really the pinnacle of what we're all searching for in life. It's not necessarily always feeling positive or always feeling joyful and exuberant. That's just being a naturally effortless process. Yes, we want more of that in our life. We want to cultivate more of that in our life. And the means by which we do that is actually through accepting our fallibility, accepting times when things are harder, when there's more challenge, when there's more strife, when there's unknowns, let's say, you're coming up against in your business, or you're finding challenge in your relationship with your partner. There's a point of conflict, let's say. These are potentials for so much more expansion in the relationship, in the business, with your finances. There are such crucial opportunities because there are opportunities for death. Death of what? Death of past parts of ourselves. When you are working out, when you're exercising, when you're training your body, and you're coming up against the limits of yourself, you're going on an intense run, and you're at this cardiovascular threshold, or you're pushing lots of weight in the weight room, and you're coming up against challenge and strain and failure. That is another point of death, and that is the point where growth can take place, where we can increase our threshold for being stronger, being able to run further and faster, to be more resilient. because those are all points of death. Those are all opportunities for old parts of us, let's say, to die off. Right now I'm in the process of creating a course that kind of encapsulates this death and rebirth process and how this mental alchemy, if you will, this alchemical process is the pinnacle of transforming your health, your wealth, your sense of purpose in life, your sense of love and connectedness in relationships, and your connection to a higher power. And the first step of that is recognition or revelation. And I mean from a mental alchemy perspective. Okay, it's recognition of the shadow. And the shadow, if you're not familiar, is derived from Jungian psychology, the works of Carl Jung. Very, very wise and prolific author in the field of psychology and one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite researchers and minds of all time, formulated this concept of the shadow that we all know. We all hear of this term. What exactly does that mean? Well, to recognize the shadow, think about what the shadow is, right? It's the dark. It's the part of ourself that we cast off from consciousness, let's say, because we're afraid of those parts of ourself. We feel ashamed of those parts of ourself, and so it can lend itself to being projected onto others. By projecting, I mean you have a piece of yourself that because you're afraid to look at it, you solely project that onto another, and you say, and for that reason you have disdain for others because they embody these characteristics that you're afraid to see in yourself. That could even be good things, such as they're more affluent, okay, they're more successful in their finances or their relationships, and you become resentful of that. Because in reality, you desire that, but there's something within you that you're afraid to look at that's preventing you from having it in the first place. And so you become resentful of those people. And by becoming resentful or being resentful, that actually pushes it further away from you because you're signaling to yourself that you don't actually want that thing. Even though that's not what you're consciously thinking, but again, this is unconscious. It's the shadow. So the first part of that transmutation and starting to experience more love, more wealth, more health, whatever it is you're seeking, you're desiring, it begins with recognition of the shadow and learning to integrate the shadow. Because when we acknowledge the shadow, when we acknowledge these parts of ourselves that no longer serve us, though they played some role to protect us in the past, okay, because every part of ourself is operating out of some intention of love. Ultimately, it's looking to protect you, self-preservation, looking to preserve your well-being the best way that it knows how to. So, in one case, if you came from a family where conflict was normal, where fighting was normal, and abuse of physical or verbal kinds was common, you may have had a tendency to either act out, to lash out, to engage in that conflict, right? You're engaging your fight or flight sympathetic response. Or was it an avoidance tendency? Okay, you stayed away, you kept quiet, you hid. And so coming from that brings you to this point now where it no longer serves you, but up to this point it has, because in your past you come from a background that was healthy, and that was healthy for you at least, and it was protecting you out of this underlying intention of love. Even though now you see that if you want to have more intimacy, or you want to have, you want to expand your business, let's say, you have to come to terms with that part of yourself, integrate that part of yourself, accept that was once who you are, but it's no longer who you have to be. Okay? Because you're a new creation in Christ. And what I mean by that is you're born again by realizing that your thoughts, your imagination has the power to transform who you are. You no longer have to be what you once were. You're not defined by your past, but you are made a new image by the power of your mind. Okay, I'll have to make a separate video too discussing the esoteric significance of the gospel and of the story of Christ and what that alludes to on an internal, symbolic, psychological perspective, regardless of whether or not he actually existed. I'm not trying to conjecture that right now, but showing the internal significance of this. And realizing again that the first step of actually becoming the person you want to become is to paradoxically accept the opposite, to face the opposite. You know, if you're familiar with Dante's Inferno, this is another archetypal hero's journey of going into the depths, going into hell first, to then go into paradise. And what's funny about that is, you know, while the story Dante's Inferno is kind of, because it's an archetypal story, right? It's the worst of the worst, let's say. It's hell itself. You know, on an everyday scale, you know, typically those things that you're afraid to look at, when you look at them, and when you actually accept them and actually come to terms with them, they're not that scary at all. You know, they were just scary by the fact that you were afraid to look at them. You were resisting them in a way, shoving them down whenever they started to rear their ugly head, and that gave them their strength. But when you turn to them with a sense of curiosity and knowing that they come from a place of love, that anger, that self-doubt, that self-criticism, that voice that tells you that you're not ready, when you can address that with a sense of knowing that it comes from love and it's trying to teach you something moreover about yourself, a deeper part of yourself, that is the means by which it becomes integrated. And then we step into that next phase of, okay, well, if this is no longer what I want to experience and this is no longer who I am, I no longer have to be subject to these ideas, these notions, these beliefs. What do I want to create? That goes into the next step of this four-phase process that I term the RISE method. So recognition, then imagination, and then surrendering to that, and then embodying that. And that just repeats itself again. As you embody it, you inevitably come up against more parts of yourself. It's a continual process. You embody that ideal state. You come up against parts of yourself that you have to again recognize, and then imagine a more ideal state, surrender to that ideal state, and then embody it. Thus continues the process. So again, I want to go back to this simple yet profound reminder that in embracing and recognizing death, we live even more. We can accept and honor and cherish life all the more. This isn't to say that you should be frantic and hurried and trying to go about creating everything you want to create in this lifetime, because in fact I believe that this is an eternal process of learning, that we incarnate at some level again and again. We're in this eternal dance. Okay, you see it through all the spiritual teachings. You see it in nature, whether it's through the cycles of water, through the seasons, or through the daily cycles of light and dark, through the teachings of yin and the yang and Taoism, through the teachings of Christ, even in the Bible, saying that I am the beginning and the end, saying that creation is already complete. This is an eternal process. And so I believe that again and again we are being incarnated to learn new things over and over. And so, or rather learn new and integrate more information to evolve to higher states of consciousness. And so if you're listening to this video and this is resonating with you right now, then there is a part of yourself, and in this lifetime, that you're being called to heal trauma. You're being called to exude more love, to step into more of your God power, to create more wealth, more health, more abundance for yourself, for your family, for your community. And you're a seeker of truth and of knowledge. And you're curious about this human experience and why we're here and what we're here to create and how we're here to serve. So I want to commend you for that. Thank you for being here. And yes, you already recognize that death is essential to life. We all do at an intuitive level, but we can come up against parts of ourselves, and I'm experiencing this more and more. I would say, in fact, as we continue to accelerate our growth and our success and our evolution, or whatever you want to call that, are experiencing more love and, let's say, resolving or dropping resistances that we've just been holding up. The more you step into that process, the more you have to delve into the depths. It's paradoxical like that, right? It's one and the same. A tree whose branches reach into heaven must have roots reaching down into hell. So at the same token that you want to ascend, that we want to rise, we must be willing to descend, to go down into the depths. And so this is just a reminder of that memento mori, and acknowledging and accepting death. We embrace life all the more. So in a more practical sense, when you are in your day, when you're going about your day, or you're going about creating that life as it is already finished, and you're simply just allowing that to come to you now by embodying that ideal state now, check out the previous video to talk about and understand how creation is already complete. As you go about that process, inevitably you're going to come up against parts of self that need death, that need to die off, that need to be let go and surrendered to, accepted, because in that acceptance is when they can die off. And the dead can bury the dead, meaning that you no longer have to be that person. You no longer have to carry that that shame or that guilt or that worry, that self-doubt, self-criticism. It's gone. And it renews you now to be the person, more of the person that you truly are. That is who you desire to be. And so that is a simple affirmation, if you will, a simple mantra, if you will. Whenever you're starting to feel whatever that emotion, that challenging emotion is, whatever it is. Could even be apathy. Could even be a lack of emotion. It could be apathy. It could be anger. It could be being overwhelmed, feeling burnt out, feeling afraid of what might come next, afraid to ask for more money, afraid to take the next step in growing your business, feeling overwhelmed in the journey to becoming a healthier person, however that looks for you. But just simply remembering that it's a process, a continual process of accepting who you once were, letting that die off so then you can truly live and step more into that person and enjoy that process of becoming. And you always become that which you are. So becoming through the being, because creation is already complete. And in recognizing that, you also accept death and recognize and remember death, how valuable and how necessary it is for this life-sustaining process. So thank you for sticking around till the end. Super grateful to have you here. Check out the links in the description for the previous video. If you want to work with me further, there's an application in the bio. There's also a free subconscious reprogramming masterclass that I've made to help you in this process to naturally integrate these shadow elements, to bring them to light, to accept them, become aware of them, accept them, and then use that to help you step more fully into the person that you want to be now. Because you are the person that you want to be now. It's just a matter of letting die off the parts of yourself that say otherwise. So check that out. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'll talk with you soon. Let's rise.